Welcome to the Global Marketing Show, the podcast for all things international business. I'm your host, Wendy Pease, president of Rapport International and a translation expert. Come along with me today as we talk to an expert in the global marketing world about facing their biggest fears, hearing about mistakes they made or saw, discussing best practices, and sharing fun travel, language, and culture stories. Welcome back to another episode of the Global Marketing Show podcast, where we talk all things translation and global marketing. And I just love interviewing the guests because I always learn something. So just a reminder that the podcast is sponsored by Rapport International, who connects you to anyone, anywhere in the world in over 200 languages by offering high quality, culturally adapted translations. And the tidbit for today is Jimba Ite. You may have heard me talk about this one before because it's the tagline for Mazda. And I get such a kick out of going to Google Translate or machine translation to see how they translate it, because it's the tagline that's supposed to symbolize a archery warrior riding across the plains at one with the horse, ready to do battle. And so it captures such a good image of a car that's speedy and responsive. But if you put it into Google Translate, the first thing it came up was danger, which is not a good tagline for a car. One time I put it in, it came up as just Jinba, which has no meaning. And today I put it in and it came up as horse and man. So it's just another reminder that machine translation cannot solve the translation problems that you might be trying to solve. So today's guest is Tamer Flores, and he has been an innovative visionary focused on growing companies and revenue and business development and strategies for companies that want to expand internationally. He speaks 3 languages. He's a real visionary, and he was brought on as a consultant to HairClub to drive international growth and global expansion for them. So welcome, Tamer. I'm very excited to have you here.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So I'm so curious, what was the impetus for HairClub bringing you on?
Well, HairClub is a company that offers hair solutions. They do hair regrowth, hair replacement, hair restoration. Regrowth is when they help you regrow your own hair. They have vitamins and ideal laser hats, and you can regrow your own hair. And then hair replacement is where they have hair systems that they attach to your scalp with medical adhesive, and they in that way they replace your hair immediately. And then hair restoration, which is the transplants, when they transplant your own hair into the spaces where you don't have much. So basically, the CEO is a very smart person, very intelligent, and he realized that if they don't grow and do new things, they are opening a window for future potential issues and competitors catching up. HairClub is the biggest company in the industry here in the US and the world, but if they don't move forward, there are always competitors that can catch up. So that's why he brought me in.
Okay. And what did which makes a lot of sense. If you don't move forward, you can stagnate, especially when the competitors are nipping. And there's a huge market internationally.
Right. Definitely. Yes. There are many cultures that give a lot of value to the hair. So given that, there is a lot of opportunities.
So what did he task you with doing when you came in?
Well, let me tell you a story of how we met. That's a funny story. We connected through LinkedIn, and then he said he wanted to talk to me, and then we were exchanging some emails and things, but he never got back to me. And then in January of 2021, I saw a LinkedIn message that said this is his birthday. So I just say happy birthday through LinkedIn, and then he answered and he said, you know what, we need to meet and let's set up a meeting right now. just because I said happy birthday, right? So that was a good thing. So he's in Boca Raton, I'm in Orlando. So he said, let's meet together in person. So I drove there. We met, we spoke. He presented me to the main people at the company, and then we had dinner with also a couple of important executive people. And then he said, okay, you're the right person. You have been an entrepreneur. You know how to handle yourself, and we need somebody with that mentality to help us grow internationally. And I have been a CEO for 17 years, since I was 30 years old, for a medical device distributor company. And I've made at least 40 international deals, at least. So with all that, he said, okay, we need somebody that thinks in that way. And so let's start as a consultant. And I need you to drive us and guide us on growing internationally. So that was the main task. So
now, had he ever done international work, or had he lived international?
well, it's kind of Canada, if you consider that international, right? They have they have a few centers in Canada and one franchise in Canada. And Puerto Rico, again, that could be considered international. They have one franchise in Puerto Rico. So basically just North America and mostly English speaking parts of North America, although in Montreal they do have a couple of centers.
Okay, so he's really a visionary and knew that he wanted to bring in good support, and he saw that in you. And so how do you start?
Correct. We really think very much alike. And yes, he wanted to grow with a mentality. Yes, well, it was an exciting new challenge for me. The first thing is to getting to know the company itself, how it works, the culture and everything, the products, the services, how it really works inside. And he assigned me that task for 3 months. So I was working 3 months, interviewing people, talking with people, and asking them how they see we could grow internationally, right? So that's how I started analyzing the company from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, the next 3 months, I was assigned with the task of making a plan for how to grow internationally. So I really did a lot of research and how is the best way to do it, and in a safe way, because there are a lot of risks when you go internationally and you don't know the cultures, right? So I made a very interesting, exciting, and a really aggressive way to grow, but taking care of the risks that would mean. So, and that was the second part of it. And after the CEO read that second part, he said, "Okay, now I like
okay,
this."
so hold on there. I want to capture that. So you've got 200 countries in the world,
Yes.
and they're in 2, or Puerto Rico, so however you count that, 2, maybe 3. How did you pick, like, how did you marry the culture and products and services of the company to which countries you wanted to go into or recommend?
Okay. Well, the way of picking is first according to the importance those countries gives to culture, to the hair, right? Like what does hair mean in that culture, right? How important is that? And so I had to choose places where they really sometimes they even have a status meaning to hair. And
So
then
what countries have a high value in hair and which countries not as much?
well, in general, there is an importance to hair, right? But in countries like in Latin America, and maybe even some places in Africa, like Egypt and Italy, places that are like that have been an empire before. Those, for some reason, they give a lot of importance to her. And then
Wait.
also,
Countries that have been an empire before.
yeah, rulers of empires like thousands of years ago, they they dictated the mode and the hair, and they still have this importance because many places where the hairstyle was to have lots of hair, that was really important. So that is still a thing in the world.
That
But
is fascinating. So it really is a historical value of hair,
right,
and rulers had, okay. And how
but
about,
it's just the first piece of it, because then
well,
currently,
we got to look at the
okay,
opposite side. Which countries did you kind of rule out because they didn't have the importance of hair as much? Or not rule out, but put lower on the choice.
right, right. I don't want to mention them like one by one, but basically countries where it really doesn't matter, if you have hair or not. They are not, what's the way to say it, they don't give it enough importance. They are like, okay, if you don't have hair, is fine, really. Like, you don't need to. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything if you don't have much hair. So there are places where the mode is not important, the look is not important at all, and things like that. So they
Nordic
wouldn't spend money.
countries, Caribbean countries, certain African countries.
Certain European countries, and even certain African countries. Yes.
Okay, how
Hmm.
fascinating. All right. I
Hmm.
wouldn't have thought that would have been one of the first criteria. It makes sense, but I didn't know there was
Right.
that much of a difference in culture. So that is such a huge learning lesson for anybody listening to this podcast. Okay.
Right. But the way I approach it is not that it was not important,
Right.
but the other way I approach it, we have to go first where there is a lot of importance. So
Right.
I wouldn't, I wouldn't say there are countries that really, really don't care about it. It's just that there are countries that is really important. That's what I focus on. So,
Okay. Okay.
not
And so
right.
those bubbled up to the top, to the higher
Exactly.
priority. And then the
Exactly.
other ones just they're not in the preliminary one.
Correct. Because at
Okay.
the end, every country, has people that wants to have her, and for men and also for women, right? For women is very important. So it's not that they don't want or they don't have a market. It's just that the market is better in other places.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So then you figure out your primary countries that have a high importance of hair. What's the next step?
The next step is social and political things. So have to make sure that it's political stable country, so that you don't invest and then you have many risks after 4 or 5 years of investing, right?
Mhm.
And then the economical situation has to be stable, socially also stable, right? And cultural fit in the sense that HairClub is a very American brand, so that they really appreciate American brands, right? So all of those together were the ones that gave me an approach. Also, I have developed a flowchart for any industry and any company that can, with three easy questions, you can define what is the best strategy, and together with the best markets for a product or service. And it's very interesting flowchart, but basically it helps you decide if you want to go into a new market as joint venture, an acquisition, or maybe a franchise or subsidiaries, right? And gives you the best strategy according to the market of the country and according to your product and service and the company itself. And it's a very good guide. So basically, that also has some social and economical question to it. So you need to go to a place where initially where you are almost sure you're going to be successful because of the market and because of the economical situation of that country, right? So with my flowchart, that helped me a lot, and to guide for every country, I would run it through the flowchart, and define how good was it for the market and what strategy was better. In some countries, joint ventures are better. Some countries, franchises are better. Depends on the market, depends on the economical situation. And that's what I did.
So when you did your research and picked out countries, did you want to go into multiple countries at a time or start with one? Or did you build out a grid of which countries you do a JV and which countries you do a franchise? Or, so how do you think about that?
Yes. First of all, I started always planning on 2 to 3 countries at a time, because every country has its own speed and you never know. So if you only work in one, that could take too long, right? So 2 to 3 countries, then you start investigating and researching for possible partners, and then you have interviews with 4 or 5 potential partners in every country, right? And according to the market and the partners also, you will decide if it is better a strategy of a joint venture or a franchise or an acquisition, right? So you have to talk to the people. So the flow chart that I made gives you a guideline, but then you have to match that with what the candidates in those countries are telling you, right? So they will tell you that we don't want to do a joint venture here. We want to do a franchise, or here is better to do an acquisition for certain reasons and conditions in the market. So they will tell you, but you already go with an idea of what's the best for the company, because what you want to do with this flowchart and with your decision is to maximize revenue while minimizing risk. So that's what the flowchart is about. What is the best way to get here to get the most revenue with the lowest risk? So that's the decision thing that you have to that you have to pick, right? The final decision you have to pick. So that's a flow chart, and that's what you want to do. But then when you talk to the candidates, they're going to tell you, well, in our culture, this works better, right? And then you have to define if the risk and revenue are a fit with what the candidates are telling you that works better in that country, right? So you might decide that, okay, this country is best for an acquisition. And they tell you, no, nobody's going to sell you their similar centers or whatever. And then you have to decide if you want to go joint venture or not, because maybe they all want joint venture, but you have decided that it's too risky, right? So
can you talk in particulars about HairClub, like maybe some of the countries that you looked at, some of the conversations that you might have had, like bring it down to, were you flying into the country? Were you doing Zoom calls? How did you build the relationships? Did they speak English? So more detail of what you were doing, because I find this fascinating.
Yes, that's interesting. First of all, I got in partnership with an institution or 2 or 3 that would help me find some leads and to talk about the market in general, right? And so I would talk to people in those organizations, and I would have a general idea about if it was or not a good idea.
So you hired a company, or who was the organization to give you some leads?
Yeah, I hired some. Well, not even hired. I talked to those organizations beforehand. I will have to find them and ask to talk to them and see if they could do some market research. Before the market research, I would talk to them in general about the possibilities and opportunities in those countries, right? And then after that,
what kind of companies were they?
They were governmental companies and also private companies.
Okay, so you did reach out to some of the International Trade Association, federal government employees, and some of the state.
Right, and private companies also.
Okay.
that do market research to just to talk in general about the idea, right?
Okay, so
And
just
if and
just for our listeners, there are lots of free federal and state resources that companies, small, mid-sized companies can reach out to get some of this free consulting or ideas.
the first talks, yes, but then you have to pay for it.
Yeah,
After that, when you order the actual market research or whatever, you have to pay for it, right?
right.
But at the beginning, of course, even with private organizations, you just talk about the possibilities, and then you get an idea of if it is a good idea or not, right? And then you order that market research and research for potential partners, right? And so that I talk to people in so many countries. I talk to people in Italy, in Qatar, in Colombia, Peru, Australia, China, Hong Kong, India, Canada again, and so many countries. And
So at this point, you didn't have your top 2 or 3 countries. You spread
correct,
out pretty wide
correct,
to do
correct.
research. Okay.
Right, a little wide, but not more than 10 countries that I already had investigated as for cultural and political and economical fit, right?
Mhm.
And some countries like in Latin America, they look like good places to go, but then the political situation was very stable at that moment, so
Mhm.
I put them off for later, right? So not that we cannot do business with them, but it's just for later. And so eliminating, or not eliminating, but this prioritizing the countries, we got to basically just a few countries that were left, and the most important one was Australia for HairClub. It was Australia, and there were a lot of synergies. And I talked to a few people and a few candidates, and a very good cultural match, cultural fit, and they think alike. HairClub, right? Not only Australians have many things in common with the USA, but also the partners that we were talking. They think very much like HairClub, and so that was a very good cultural fit. And we talked to 3 potential partners there, and then we decided for one, and we started talking about merchant acquisition. In this case, it was actually not a exact merge, it was a joint venture. But this joint venture, this company already has a daughter company that does hair replacement, and the company, the bigger company, the parent company, does hair regrowth. So basically, we talk about establishing a joint venture with the daughter company, with the smaller company. So that was the main idea. That was the way they wanted to do it. And then the truth is, once I start talking to the partners more seriously about what are we going to do, I tell them that I don't want to impose her club's culture or American culture into their country. I don't want to make that mistake, because they are the experts on their culture. So
Mhm.
we are not going to impose them anything. Actually, how would they see that this could work? So what do they want to do
So you were
in
very
that
open
country?
and curious. Yeah.
Right. So I'm not going to impose anything. So if they tell me 2 or 3 options that are not feasible for her club, then I wouldn't go on with that country. But I wouldn't tell them you have to do this, and this. So are you? I'm not going to talk like that, right? I'm not going to say that. I'm going to ask them what is it that I need to do and learn from them, right?
Okay. So I have to ask here, because you mentioned a whole bunch of countries that speak a bunch of different languages. And oftentimes US companies will go into Australia or UK because they speak English. But that wasn't one of your criteria that you were talking about. Can you talk about how you handled the language and how you were looking at Hair Club doing the global marketing, or you at this point?
Right, right. Well, you know that English is very much worldwide language. So for important companies, there is always people and executives in that country, in that company, that speak English. So that's the good part. Now, I myself, I speak Spanish and I speak Italian. So when I talk to Italy and I talk to Spain, actually, I didn't mention Spain before. In Spain, we had an acquisition opportunity. So when I was talking to those people in Latin America, in Spain, and in Italy, I would talk to them in their own language. But in the other countries, was fortunate enough that I could find people that would speak English. Now, it was very interesting in China. When I was talking to China, it was one of my first countries, and I was trying to figure out and talk several times with a candidate, trying to figure out if it was a fit. And with that, we had somebody that was translating for us. We had another person that was a translator, and
They were doing the spoken facilitation of conversation.
correct.
So
Now,
I'll use this as an education moment. Just interpreters do spoken and translators do written. So nobody
correct.
outside the industry knows that. But now if you've heard it, you know it. Interpreters are spoken, translators written. So you had interpreters that were helping you communicate from English to Chinese.
Correct.
Okay.
And it made it a little more difficult, but not impossible to communicate. However, at the end, we decided it was not one of the best markets to start with. Also, because this is a new adventure, so we want to make sure we can establish ourselves in 2 or 3 important countries. And I decided that China was probably for the second group of countries that we should go into, but not the first, because of political situation and again, the executives not speaking English made it a little more difficult too.
Okay. So your first group, you wanted to find something where it would be easy to communicate with the executives.
Correct.
And then get the plan in place, and then you could
Correct.
replicate it with, okay. Yeah, that
Correct.
makes sense.
And I found that in every country except for China.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, we're coming down to the end of the time. So this is fantastic. What do you think the biggest challenges are going to be for HairClub as they expand internationally?
Well, again, I think their CEO is great. He's very smart. We used to joke that he told me I was amazing, and I would tell him that he was a great CEO, but just joking. So anyway, the Hair Club is owned by a Japanese company called Adherence. Okay, and Japanese have a different working culture. And so even inside Hair Club, I believe that there's a potential to improve how they work inside, right? And I think that is one of the biggest challenges, is that the Japanese start thinking a little more like Americans when they are here, and the Americans start thinking a little bit more like Japanese when they are dealing with the Japanese executives. That's a challenge. That's a challenge, but I'm sure that they're improving at that, and that it will be successful. So that's one of the challenges, and the other one is that you need to be 100% sure and convinced that you want to do this, because at the beginning you are going to have lots of steps back, right? And you're going to have lots of issues. So if you don't keep pushing, then you are probably not going to be successful. So I talked to 12 countries and move forward with 3, right? So that's something that is going to take time, and then it takes at least 2 to 3 years. So you are not going to have results in less than 2 or 3 years. So if you are not sure, if you are in a hurry, if you try to rush it, that's a challenge. So either you are sure that you're willing to wait at least 2 to 3 years for the first results, or you better not start with it, because you're probably not going to be successful in less time than that, and it's not worth it. Then if you're not sure, if the company is not sure, then it's not going to work.
Okay. Yeah, that's I have heard that, and that is really good advice. Commit to it, have senior leadership buy-in, and then give time to get the results. Yeah.
Correct.
So I didn't realize that Hair Club was owned by a Japanese company. Do they
Right.
have operations in Japan?
The Japanese company HairClub does, but Allianz has businesses in several countries, in all continents. They make wigs and they make related products. But HairClub has not started operations in Japan, which was also one dream of mine. At some point, Japan is in the list, and I would like HairClub to be there. But even with a Japanese owner, it wasn't the best match for starting the international expansion of HairClub. So even having a Japanese owner, it was best to start at other countries, not at
Why
Japan.
was that?
Well, many different things, but basically there were better opportunities. Again, it's not that it was a bad place to go, Japan, but it
Mhm.
was a lot better to go to the other countries that we started. And I have only talked about Australia, but we have started also things or conversations and opportunities in other countries that I found were a better match.
Isn't that it? Okay, so you really did a strong strategy analysis for where to go. Because oftentimes I'll hear people say, well, the parent company was Japan, so that was a natural. Or like I said earlier, they speak English, so let's go there, even though American and Australian English are very different.
No, the space in Japan was one of the issues. Space for centers,
Oh,
right? That was one of the issues. So I mean, I I would love to go there at some point, but it's not in the first tier of countries.
yeah. Okay. And then when you're doing that strategy, does translation for the products or for the website, does that come into your analysis at all?
Yes, yes. But that's when you have already a deal and you are starting to the, for example, the merger or the joint venture, the acquisition or the franchise. That's when you really need great translators and interpreters, and that's where a company like yours would be really really important. The translation is not you know this better than I do, but translation is not about translating words, but it's about translating concepts.
Mhm.
And so if you translate the words and the words mean something else in that culture, then you are not being effective. So you need, knowledgeable translators and interpreters to be able to have a fit there, right? And a cultural impact.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting because I didn't, as a translation company, I didn't know if getting in on the strategy side but it's as soon as that deal is made, that's when you're starting to think about it. Now we got to build out our
Exactly.
operations and it would fall under that.
Correct. At
Yeah.
least that's in my process. That's where
Yeah.
it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, which is interesting. Now that you say that, there's a lot of marketing strategists or companies that come into the US and they have a market strategy, but they don't drill down into their marketing strategy, which we've done some strategy documents because coming into the US,
Mhm.
you've got to identify your target market and you have to be very specific because the market's so big. So
Correct.
yeah, so it's an afterthought. That's fascinating to me. Okay. Well, any last suggestions that you would have for people that are thinking about expanding internationally?
Yeah, I always say that the worst mistake a company can make is to enter into business with the wrong partner.
Mm,
So, according to me, to what I've seen, you lose between 4 and 6 years of penetrating a market if you do it with the wrong partner, then you break up, right? And
yeah.
between the breakup and realizing it's the wrong partner, breaking up, establishing a new company or a new partner, growing that partner again, that takes 4 to 6 years. So do a lot of research about the partner before you sign deal, and that happened actually to one of the important countries that I was growing into, which was Canada. I found a candidate that looked, it was perfect. And then when I did the research, he wasn't that perfect. So we stopped negotiations because of that.
Right.
But that's, for me, a success, because not doing business with the wrong partner, for me, is a success. However, for the outside viewer, it could look like a failure because you just didn't enter the country, right? But it would have been worse. So, and again, from the first talks and everything, it was the perfect partner. So you have to do your research after that.
That
You
is
just don't,
fantastic advice. And
right.
losing 4 to 6 years, boy, you hire slow, fire fast, right?
Right, correct,
Yeah.
correct.
All right. And I think you know this question is coming. What's your favorite foreign word?
My favorite foreign word. Well, I speak English, Spanish, and Italian. From those, the one that I don't use too much is Italian, but it's a beautiful language, And foreign word, if you ask me the foreign language, I would say Italian. And a foreign word. You know what? I live at Rome, and they have the wolf that fed Romulus and Remo.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is lupo. So
yeah.
that's a strong animal, lupo. So that would be my favorite word.
Oh, that's fantastic. And what a good one to represent the history of Rome, of a beautiful language. So that ties together beautifully.
Correct.
All right. So Tamer, you recommended your flow chart, and you've got a wealth of information. If people want to learn more about your flow chart or reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Yes, I am working right now with my own company, is Business Development Global Consulting. The website is bdglobalconsulting.com. And my email is tflores@bdglobalconsulting.com. So can I say my phone number, or is too much?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. My phone number is 786-589-1172. And the website is, again, bdglobalconsulting.com, BD as business development. So we can work together and apply all the knowledge that I have acquired during 25 years of doing international business as a CEO and as a consultant. It would be my pleasure.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your information.
Thank you, Wendy. Thanks to you for inviting me.
Yes. So, listeners, thank you. I think this was a fabulous way to think about really using a strategy to expand internationally. So it'll be interesting to watch HairClub and see which countries they enter into and how they do that. If you want to hear more podcasts, make sure you go back. Maybe number 25 is Zach Selch. He is an international salesperson, so you can listen to him. And then there is another one that's earlier, it's before him, and it's about strategy, how a company did that. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I'll put it in the show notes. You could just look for the title that says strategy. And she gave a very interesting discussion about that, it looks at it from a different perspective that Tamer did. And of course, give us a rating or share this with anybody that you think might be interested in learning about how to expand internationally. So we will talk to you next time.
Thanks, Wendy.
That's a wrap for this session. A big thanks to you for listening to the Global Marketing Show. Hope you had just as much fun as I did. New sessions launch weekly on all places you find podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and of course on our website. If you know someone interested in this topic, please tell them about us. Au revoir for now.